Alright, so if we're given this equation for our velocity, and we know at t equals 0 that we're at the origin, we want to know when the object returns to the origin. So, what relationship do I know between velocity and position? I know that velocity is the time derivative of position. So, in order to get position from our velocity, we want to take the time integral of both sides. Okay. So now I want to plug in this equation here for our v here. So we have the integral of 4t times 4 minus t minus 12 dt equals dx. Now, if I want to do this integral, it's going to be really ugly if I leave this factored out. So I want to simplify as much as possible and combine my terms. So I still have this integral. This 4t times 4 gives me 16t. 4t times a negative t gives me 4t squared. And then I have a minus 12 dt. Our dx is our change in our x. But if we're starting at the origin and we want to return to the origin, our dx is going to be 0. So now we just have to do this integral. So the integral of 16t with respect to t gives us 8t squared. Negative 4t squared integrated gives us a negative 4/3 t cubed. And our negative 12 integrated with respect to t gives us a negative 12t, all equal to 0. So I want to solve for t now. So the first thing I see is that I can pull a 4t out of each term. So if I do that, I'm left with 2t in the first term, a negative 1/3 t squared in the second term, and a negative 3 in the last term. Okay? And now, since we're assuming we are not at t equals 0, because that's when we started, we're looking for when we return to 0. So that means that t is not equal to 0, so we can divide both sides by this 4t. That gives us our 2t minus 1/3 t squared minus 3 equals 0. So now this looks like a quadratic, so I want to rearrange it to look like one, and then I'm going to also multiply by a negative 3 to make our front term a positive 1. So I'm just going to multiply both sides by negative 3. And that gives us t squared minus 6t plus 9 equals 0. Now looking at that, that looks really nice to me because I know that's a perfect square trinomial. That is our t minus 3 quantity squared equals 0. So when we return to the origin is when t equals 3 seconds.